Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to a special edition of the DC Universe Daily. As you can see behind me, I have queued up a video, a James Gunn video, where he introduces the Gods and Monsters slate and tells us a little bit about each movie and streaming show that he'll be launching in the future and explains DC Universe very well. I thought it would be good to kind of do a recap on his slate and his plan for Gods and Monsters. And really what I'm going to do is take each project, listen to what he has to say, press pause, and give you my thoughts behind it. I thought that would be an interesting thing to do. But we do have a couple of DC Universe updates. So the actress who will be playing Hawkgirl has spoken about wearing her helmet already and how it's beautiful and it's brilliant and she's very excited. She also said she loves working with James Gunn and Peter Safran, that James has got a great group of people around him and it just feels great to be in that environment, and it's great that James Gunn trusts her to play Hawkgirl. Very, very exciting. But it's what Frank Grillo had to say. Now, Frank Grillo will be playing Rick Flag Sr. in Creature Commandos. It is Rick Flag Sr. anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. This is what he had to say. Frank Grillo on Creature Commandos and how Marvel's Kevin Feige blew it. I love James Gunn and Peter Safran and what they are doing at DC and for the DCU. And these characters are living in all their movies. I'm going to be around for a while, and I wish I could tell you what I have coming up with them, but I can't. But it's exciting. I was just with the Russo brothers, Kevin Feige and Lou D'Esposito. And it's kind of like, I miss those guys, but you blew it. Now we're going over here. So that's very, very interesting, isn't it? So blatantly saying that Feige blew it. Now, I can tell you, and I'm sure you've read before, that Frank wasn't happy that his character was dispersed with very early within the MCU. So he's kind of angry about that. So this could be taken out of context. But Feige and the MCU did blow it. They blew it big time. And they blew it after Endgame and the mistakes that they made. It's done now. Even if they have a couple of wins, like with Deadpool 3, Deadpool Wolverine, we'll have to wait and see for that. But Frank Grillo is playing Rick Flag Sr. That's very exciting. I can't wait for Creature Commandos. And at the very least, what we're going to see from this video, this presentation, this great piece of presentation by James Gunn, at the very least, James Gunn has a plan. Kevin Feige had a plan. The DCEU kind of had one plan, then another plan. The DCEU started with Christopher Nolan's and David S. Goya's plan. Then it went to Zack Snyder's plan. He was going to do 2 or 3 Justice League movies. Then all of a sudden he was doing 2 Justice League movies. Then he was doing 1 Justice League movie. Then he was gone. Then we had the, Walter Hamada era. So it was a fucking mess. At the very least, what we're seeing here from James Gunn is good presentation, and he has a plan, even if whether you like that plan or not. So let's get into it. Let's have a look.
Hey everybody, I'm James Gunn. I'm the co-CEO of DC Studios. So as many of you know, DC has been disconnected in film and television for a long time. And it's one of our jobs, mine and Peter's, is to come in and make sure the DCU is connected in film, television, gaming, and...
So already he mentions from the very off that DC has been disconnected in TV and film for the longest of times, forever basically. We've had Smallville, nothing to do with the movies. We've had Arrowverse, nothing to do with the movies. Arrowverse was this big spanning DC universe, but had nothing to do with the DCEU. So while we had the DCEU, we also had Arrowverse, a totally separate thing. Is that good? Is that bad? Well, I'm not sure if that was a bad thing. Arrowverse worked for a short time. The DCEU portions of it worked for the audience. I don't think one thing hurt the other, but Gunn's making it clear that he wants everything to be connected, and if it's not connected, he'll mention next about DC Elseworlds.
Animation. That the characters are consistent, played by the same actors, and it works within one story. And if something is outside of that, like Matt Reeves' Batman or Todd Phillips' Joker or Teen Titans Go, then it is clearly labeled as DC Elseworlds, outside of.
So here it's brilliant because he's talking very slowly, he's talking very directly, he doesn't want anyone to be confused. Now some people have complained that his plan is confusing. I don't really agree with that, but what he's doing here is, if it's nothing to do with DCU, it's going to be DC Elseworlds, Teen Titans, Matt Reeves' the Batman universe, and Todd Phillips' Joker universe as well. That's outside of DC universe. So he made it very clear. So at the very off, he's explaining himself very, very well. We didn't get these kind of explanations, during the launch of Man of Steel. They had a plan for one movie that might be a franchise. That's the only plan they had. This guy has a proper plan.
The mainstream DCU continuity. Now, Peter and I have gotten pretty lucky in terms of the 4 projects that are coming out over the next year. First, we have Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Shazam has always been off kind of in his own part of the DCU, so he connects very well. That moves directly into The Flash, a fantastic movie that I really love that resets the entire DC universe. Then to move.
So as he goes on, he speaks about Shazam but doesn't say he likes the movie. He says he likes the Flash movie, mentions Blue Beetle, doesn't say if he likes it or not, by the way. And Aquaman, he just says Aquaman 2, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't even say whether he likes it or not. There was lots of problems between him and James Wan, as we already know. But he says he likes the Flash movie, which I criticised him for. Now, as I react to everything he says, I'm going to be sometimes positive and negative about what he says and what he's doing. And that's okay. That's called balance. If you can't handle balance and honest opinion, you're watching the wrong platform. Anyway, so he says he likes the Flash movie. He likes the Flash movie because he's using the Flash movie as a backdoor pilot to create this new DC universe. So DCU is born out from the DCEU.
Into Blue Beetle, a fantastic film about a kid who's a marvelous part of the DCU, and then into Aquaman 2, which leads directly into our next few projects, which I'm going to tell you about now. So, Peter and I, along with a group of very talented writers, have started to map out an 8 to 10 year plan of what DC Studios will be in film, television, and gaming. This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters. Now, what I'm about to tell you is a part of the first chapter. It's not the entire first chapter. The first project is.
So this is very, very interesting. So he's talking about an 8 to 10 year plan. So already he's telling you that he's planning on being around from 8 to 10 years. Of course, if he was to be successful, he could go on and on with DC like Bruce Timm has had. But it's all about box office and views on streaming and being successful. But he has an 8 to 10 year plan. And up to this moment, that plan has not changed.
Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos is an animated series. I've written all the episodes. Something we're going to do that's a little bit different at DC is we're going to have characters move into animation, out of animation, usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in live action.
So again, something very interesting, because it's the interconnectivity that Gunn's very serious about, and he's bringing that interconnectivity from the MCU. It's one of the most successful things of phases 1 to 3, and he's bringing that in. He's going to be introducing characters in animation, then introduce them in live action, mostly being played by the same actors. Most of the time they will be, sometimes they won't be probably. But this is a very good idea. As I say, I'll be positive when I feel there's something to be positive about, and I'll be negative if I feel I don't like something. But yeah, this is a very, very good idea, and already this sucks people in. So this is going to be the first DCU project, Creature Commandos. Now, I don't know much about this. I don't know much about the comics or the origins of these characters, but hearing these individual characters is very interesting and reading up on them. So I'm excited for this first project. And as I say, Rick Flag Sr., played by Frank Grillo, voiced by Frank Grillo, will be in this movie. So that's very, very exciting. So this is the beginning. So he doesn't really explain this actually that well. That's the one thing people were confused about, and I can understand why the normies were confused. Anything that happened prior to Creature Commandos isn't canon in DC Universe. The first season of Peacemaker isn't canon to DCU. Peacemaker Season 2 will be part of DCU. Peacemaker Season 1 will not be. Now, this is kind of something he didn't really explain well in this video, and he probably should have been a lot more descriptive. That's the only thing I think he got wrong. So, starting from this project, Creature Commandos, it's a brand new franchise born out of the DCEU. We have a brand new universe because Barry Allen went back in time to save his mother's life that changed the universe, changed the multiverse forever, and created this new reality, DCU.
The next project up is Waller. This is a story of Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. Viola Davis is going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker, and this is a story that's been created by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, and Jeremy Carver, who created the Doom Patrol. It is a
Right, this is very interesting when we talk about creative. So Crystal Henry was part of the controversial Watchmen series. And then you've got what's his name? Hang on a minute, I've forgotten his name already. Carver. So Jeremy Carver was part of a show that I loved, Doom Patrol. So this is a kind of double-edged sword. So we got one creative who did Watchmen, a show I didn't even watch, but Jeremy Carver also ran Supernatural, and he did a really good job taking over from Supernatural. So Jeremy Carver is a good creative. So I'm going to give this show the benefit of the doubt, where you've got a creative from a controversial show, but you've got a really good creative. So hopefully this will be really good. So this is a crossover. This is basically kind of a continuation of Peacemaker, but this is interesting, right? Because they're using the Peacemaker team, but everything we saw in Peacemaker Season 1 isn't canon. So this is where I suppose I said earlier this is not really confusing, but it is in a way. So this is part of DCU. So really, this is the first time we see these Peacemaker characters, for the first time in DCU. So it's going to be very interesting what kind of thing this is.
fantastic story that's out of this world, and I can't wait for people to see it. Okay.
So this is interesting. He says it's out of this world. Does he mean it's set on another world? Or is it set on Earth? So it's going to be interesting. Again, this is a project that we know nothing about. There's not been any updates. It's clear they're really focusing on Superman Legacy and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. They're the two projects that seem to be gaining momentum. So to me, I think we'll go Superman Legacy, then Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I think Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow will definitely be the next movie.
Okay. Next up is the big one, the true beginning of the DCU. This is called Superman Legacy. This is being written by me. I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time doing it. And Superman will be released into theaters July 11th, 2025. Okay, the next thing is a big...
So here he doesn't go in many details because he didn't give us the details. He's given us now for the movie. We have a full cast. There's some characters that haven't been cast yet. And there's been some kind of question marks. Will there be a Mara Park Kent? We don't know. Will there be a Perry White? We don't know. Those castings haven't been announced, but we know so much more about this movie now. We know there's going to be existing DC characters. He's been accused of oversaturating the movie with other DC characters just to create continuity and things like that. He denies that. He says all these characters are in this film for a reason, so that's very, very interesting as well. But what we're hearing about this film is very, very exciting, and it's going to be the real introduction to DC Universe, and I can't wait till next year.
Mere HBO television series called Lanterns. This is a story of a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and we have a few other lanterns peppered in there, but this is really a terrestrial.
So before actually recording this video, I watched this video to kind of become really familiar with it. So I didn't realize he said, as well as, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, there will be other lanterns peppered into this story, but it's a terrestrial based show. It's going to be a grounded show and it's going to be set on Earth. But we're going to see quite a few lanterns in this story. But what he says next is even more interesting.
Based TV show, which is almost like True Detective with a couple of Green Lanterns who are space cops watching over Precinct Earth. In it, they discover a terrifying mystery that ties into our larger story of the DCU.
Now, this is very interesting. So this series ties in to a mystery, to the longer story arc of Gods and Monsters and DC Universe. A story that probably will span for the next 8 to 10 years. So that's going to be very, very important, very vital that fans understand it and watch it. It's going to be on Max. Now, Max isn't available to everyone. It's not available to me. So I'm going to have to wait quite a while to see this unless they're able to sell international rights to Netflix or someone. We'll have to wait and see. There's no development on this quite yet. So as I said earlier, it looks like Legacy and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow are the first ones. And I think we're going to get one project a year. I think I'm really, really cool with this. I don't want an oversaturation.
Big movie called The Authority. The Authority is a passion project of mine. It's based on the marvelous Wildstorm characters.
So we know that James really likes the Wildstorm characters. Again, I don't know much about them. So I'd love someone to comment and explain to me about the Wildstorm characters. But he says something very important, that this is a passion project of his. So when someone says something's a passion project, you expect a writer-director to write and direct the film. So I believe James will write and direct this film. I could be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. That's just my theory. He was asked by a fan if he'll be writing and directing more projects in DC Universe. His simple answer was, that's what I'm here for. Yes, he's the co-CEO of DC Studios. He's the creative arm. He's here to be a creative, to give us, his qualities. And he does have, if you talk to James, one of the most fascinating things about James is his knowledge of DC Comics and Marvel Comics and so many other things. He's a proper nerd. So he absolutely loves and knows this stuff, and that's very, very important. But I do expect him to write and direct The Authority.
We are now bringing into the DCU and will interact with all of our primary DCU characters. The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. I think it's a very different look at superheroes. We're doing a television series called Paradise Lost.
Before we go there, so it does sound like a very interesting premise. No jack shit about it, but it does sound interesting. Again, the selection of characters also sounds very interesting. So what James is looking to do is give us the big characters and then spread out the universe with the kind of grade C, the grade D characters that we don't know about. But just because we don't know about them doesn't mean they're mid and boring. So yeah, I like that. I like the idea of having Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and the Lanterns and all of that, but also having these smaller graded characters and making it a proper universe.
Paradise Lost is a story of Paradise Island, usually known as Themyscira, which is the birthplace of Wonder Woman. It's almost like Game of Thrones with Westeros, but with all of the inhabitants of Paradise Island. The introduction of the DCU's Batman is So
this is very interesting. Again, he doesn't go into many details about Paradise Lost. So he talks about it being a Game of Thrones type. He doesn't even say if it's a prequel. He doesn't say anything. Apparently it is a prequel, but he doesn't really go into many details about Paradise Lost. So that's going to be very interesting. It's a Max show again. So these are high-level quality shows for Max as well. Lanterns, Paradise Lost. These are upping the ante on streaming comic book TV. When you look at the Marvel D Plus shows, they really haven't amped up the quality of that kind of situation. So they're two very exciting projects.
Brave and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold is the story of Batman and his actual son, Damian Wayne. This is based on Grant Morrison's great comic book run. Damian Wayne is my favorite Robin. He's a little assassin who Batman tries to get in line. And so this is the story of the two of them and the beginning of sort of the Bat family in the DCU. Next up.
So the most important thing he says here, first of all, his love for Damian Wayne, and I share that love for Damian Wayne. I think it's a great choice for Robin, by the way, in DC Universe. He also says a very, very important thing. It's the beginning of the Bat family in DCU. Batman fans, for the longest of time, have wanted a live-action Batman family universe. And James Gunn is going to give it to you. Give it to us. These are the type of things we were crying out for, because I am a fan of the Snyderverse. I'm a fan of what he did. But a lot of the stuff wasn't there. It was kind of Batman at the end of his career. So we didn't get to meet all the different versions of the Bat family. I think he was going to, we were going to get, I think there was going to be a Batgirl or a Batwoman introduced into Ben Affleck's movie, the Batman movie. But right, this is a proper plan. And to actually know that you're getting the Bat family is something very, very exciting.
There's a TV series called Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of comics' really popular cult heroes. He is a fascinating guy. He's a loser from the future who uses future technology to come back to present day and become a superhero so that people will love him. It is basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome on an HBO Max series. One of my favorite comic book series from last year.
So this is very, again, because I don't know much about Booster Gold. All I know about him is what I saw in his episode of Smallville, which was written by Jeff Johns. It was a really great way to introduce him into the Smallville mythos, and they also brought in Blue Beetle at the same time. So that's all I know about Booster Gold, and I really like what they did with him in that episode. Again, it's going to be a Max series. It sounds like a really fun, exciting Max series, and I'm here for it. Because also, that could we could get some hints towards the Legion as well. And if you're a big DC fan, you'll know all about the Legion. The only reason I know about the Legion, again, because Jeff Johns wrote an episode about them on Smallville. And again, it was a great introduction and description of those characters. So exciting times if you're a hardcore DC fan.
It was Tom King's run on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And so we're going to turn that into a big science fiction epic film. Now, Superman is a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents. Whereas Supergirl in this story, she is a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way. So she's a much more jaded character. And that brings me to...
So this is very, very interesting. Again, so basically he's blatantly telling us that this Supergirl is going to be a bit more aggressive, jaded as he puts it. She's on a rock. She sees everyone die, and it's a huge science fiction epic movie. So for me, it's going to be very interesting the type of director he's going to get. We've referenced this a lot of times on this platform. What kind of director does he bring in? And it really needs to be a very, very good director. So again, you come back to Greta Gerwig. Always lead to Greta, because I am concerned if we go if we get a female director who's failed before, we really need someone the public trusts, or someone who's capable. There's so many great female directors out there. There's ones coming out of film school all the time. They're there. Instead of representing the wrong females, the wrong diverse people, represent the talented ones. This sounds like a fucking epic movie. And as I say, Superman Legacy, then it'll be Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I'm very, very excited for it.
Swamp Thing, the last thing we're going to talk about, a very dark horror story in the origins of the monster who is Swamp Thing. And although it's totally outside of the rest of the DCU, it will still feed into the rest of the stories. Anyway, those are the stories that I can tell you.
This is very interesting. He says this film is more outside of DCU, but it still links in to the other stories. So it's not DC Elseworlds. But I think what James is trying to say here, it's more self-contained as a film. And that's why Mangold's doing it. He's going to do his own thing. He also says it's quite a dark story as well. I mean, having a Swamp Thing movie is fucking exciting. And it shows you this man gets it. Now, me speaking positively about this, as I've done so many times, because I have been balanced about James being in DC Universe, will upset certain people. I can't help how you feel. I'm a DC fan. I want to see a great, epic mixture of tones. I want to see a dark tone. I want to see a light tone. So, like, Swamp Thing's going to be dark. The Authority's probably going to be dark. There are dark things that he's introducing here, but there'll also be lighter things, right? And that's great, a mixture of tones. It doesn't all have to be the same. And by the way, like he's doing the Bat family, by having Supergirl, he's also going to introduce the Super family as well, which is also very exciting.
About right now, I've loved the DC characters since I was a child. They're incredibly important to me. I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something very different. One of the things that's very important for me in all of these movies and TV series is that the director's vision and the vision of the writers and all of the creators is unique and something special. Storytelling is always king. That's all that matters.
So, as you can see here, he's talking about it. He's wanting it to be unique, that storytelling is all that matters. And you see that in his Guardians movies. You saw that in Peacemaker. Whether you like his stuff, the storytelling is king in his projects. And this is good, that you're not just watching another part of the DCU, that it's a film that's got a story that you're going to enjoy. That's the point he's making.
Matters to us. And I want to be true to those stories. I want to be true to you guys and really give you something different than you've ever seen before. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you watching. I hope this was exciting for you because it's really exciting for me. And I can't wait to start to dive into these stories with you guys on this grand adventure. Thank you so much.
So, very, very exciting. Let's talk about it. So, even though we've seen that video before and we know his plans now, it did take me back to that announcement. So what's the number one thing you got from that? My number one takeaway was presentation. It was well presented, even though I called out things that he didn't explain properly and maybe he could have explained more in detail. But he speaks slowly, he's got a plan, he's got an idea, and he's presenting it to us. And to me, it's a very, very good plan. It's something that a lot of us have been looking for a very long time. And this is before the Snyderverse. It's before Snyder came in. For years and years, we wanted someone to grab hold of DC and say, look, I have a plan. I want to introduce the Super family. I want to introduce the Bat family. I want to give you a Swamp Thing. I mean, there's thousands of DC fans who are hyped for a Swamp Thing movie, who have been crying for a Swamp Thing movie, who were very angry that the Swamp Thing TV series was cancelled. We're getting it. James Mangold, a really good writer-director, is coming in, fingers crossed, to do it. I don't think we'll see it for a very long time. It's going to, take a long time to get all this done, but it's going to be very slowly, next 8 to 10 years. But yeah, the first thing you get from this video, it's well presented. And so, as I say, some people won't want to hear that, but it's the truth. Unlike what we've had in the past, there's a plan, there's a vision. And I mean, how long ago was that video? I can't remember. It must have been last year, right? So nothing's changed. You look at the DCEU, as I said earlier, we went from Goyer and Nolan to Snyder and Terrio to, Johns and Berg to Hamada and Safran, right? The people doing it changed so often. It was like a train where the brakes broke and they were trying to go, oh my God, we can't stop. That's what the DCEU was. I love a lot of the movies in that franchise, but they're the facts, unfortunately. We have got someone who has got a record in making really good comic book movies. So that's my opinion. I like what he's done in comic book live action, and he has a plan, and he also has a great love and knowledge for the comic books. That's my takeaway. Now, it's one thing, as I said at the time, it's one thing to have a good plan, but the execution is important. There's some really, really good creatives in there with him, there's no question. There's a couple in there where I kind of think, Christina Hodson seems to be part of that team. You know, she wrote Birds of Prey in the Flash movie, so that's kind of, but he's there and he's got a team around him. That's the most important thing. And as I say, it's important to be balanced. If I don't like something, like I just brought up Christina Hodson, which I see as a red flag, but there's so many other things that are not red flags that excite me. So I'm just being balanced here. And I think, as I said earlier, Superman Legacy, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow are going to be the first two movies I think they're doing. The first thing we're going to see from DCU is Creature Commandos. So I think they're the first three projects we're going to see. So as a DC fan, I think as a DC fan, if you're a DC fan who's not so invested in the Snyderverse or what happened with the DCEU, and you're outside of all of that, you see finally there's someone here, there's someone leading it, there's someone who knows the comics, and someone who can not only just make great games, TV, streaming, animation and movies, but someone who has a plan. And I think that's important, a plan that we stick with. No matter what happens, that we stick with this plan. We have someone competent in charge, someone who was a big deal during the good phases of the MCU. I still think it's crazy how Feige didn't make any offer to Gunn to stay. But unfortunately, the die was cast. They'd already fired him and he was only coming back to finish the final chapter of Guardians. He must have been hurt when they fired him because there was other ways of dealing with those problematic historical tweets. But James Gunn is here. He's in charge. And at the very least, we're going to see Creature Commandos and we're going to see Superman Legacy. It's very exciting that we have this upcoming Superman film. Let's all be balanced. Let's all wait and see how the sandwich tastes before we judge it.